Again, Black Ice TV, all one word, HKTH, Knowledge and Travels. This is Terry Riggs coming at ya with our good old uncle that's giving us all this information. I'm so delighted and I'm so happy about it. We're coming to another part of this artifacts that we can see upstairs in the British Museum. It's not even in the African department at the moment. So, uncle, now this display all this information to us about this changing traditions.
Yes. Well, basically, what we're looking at is a clay pots and terracotta figures. You know.
Yeah.
Now, not only can they be made only of clay and terracotta, you can even find some made of wood. Why these, should we say, objects are important is, again, in the African spiritual cosmology. Remember, even things that we consider inanimate, that means things which are not alive, contain a certain essence of God. And it's this essence of the Creator that allow these objects to be able to use for whether it's ritual communication or maintaining a certain cosmological balance. So, for instance, you find a burial spots. This is for the Akan, predominantly, where you will find some of these at burial spots where people have been buried, and they might contain parts of the person that has passed away. You know, in a sense, it becomes a way of remembering that person and keeping a certain part of their essence still in the physical life. Yeah. You know, you find this even when you go among the Bakongo of Central and East Africa. Some of these objects might even contain what people might term talisman. You know, it has a certain ritual significance and functions and does a particular job.
Okay.
You know, so that job can be protecting the person, making a woman fertile to get pregnant.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, we have the Ikwaba figurine, which in certain rituals among African communities, Ikwaba, it's a woman with two hands. You'll be familiar with it.
Okay.
Google it, you see it come up.
Okay.
And there are certain rituals, for instance, where the woman, if she wants to conceive, will have to carry this doll around. So it's almost like the doll becomes a symbolic representation of the child that is yet to come. And so as a result, when she does get pregnant, no one is really surprised because she's been through that process. Yeah, so they're not just objects to look at per se, but some of these objects can be activated with a certain essence that then allows them to become objects of power.
Okay.
Yes, and they can be used accordingly for a variety of purposes.
If I was looking for wealth or I was looking for happiness, how would I use these things?
Well, that would be a matter for you to go and find when you go through and see the particular, be it Babalawo or traditional priest.
But let me ask, like you know, like, because a lot of people have this negativity on things, right? Is it the person that is doing bad, or is it the Babalawo or the priesthood that is doing bad?
You see, this is again, when you start using words like good and bad, you're talking from a certain European perspective. Okay. You cannot have that same explanation do justice in an African context. Because again, I'll give you an example. When I was telling you earlier about the conception of the Creator or God, when you think of nature, again, nature can give us food. It can sustain us. That's a positive thing. But at the same time, you can have a tsunami, you can have a flood, and that will kill people. Are you then going to say that is this idea then of God good or bad? It's not. Yeah. It's both at the same time, but then most importantly, both have different functions. We have to look at the functionality. Yes, yeah. Both serve important functions, because even forest fires, as an example, it might destroy the vegetation, but it makes the soil fertile. So where's the good and where's the bad? You see, again, that's what I said. You have to understand the African, you have to look at how the African thinks, and the African thinks in multiplicities. Yeah, it's not just A or B. A can be B, and you can have AB, and
Yeah.
all the different variations of how you might want to.
Like, for instance, like, because a lot of people, if I said to you, I'm going to the Obia man, or I'm going to the Babalawo man, or whoever I need to go to,
Yeah.
and the first thing that people's mindset is, oh, this guy is going to get something bad to do to somebody.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or to make money.
Yeah.
But then let me ask the question then is, when Christians pray, what do they pray for? Don't they pray for Jesus to bless them with a good life? Or God to bless them with a good life? Oh, give me a car, give me a house.
Or to even punish.
Well, exactly, the biggest one, send back any negative to my enemies, and you're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Again, as I said, this is a historical propaganda, a mechanism that we haven't just managed to get beyond. It's your intent that determines everything. The Babalawo or the priest, they know this energy source is partial to all. If you decide to use it for something negative, what you have to be comfortable with is the fact that because everything is a cycle, the African spiritual system is a cycle, you should expect that you're going to get something back. So if your intent is negative, you might get a short-term gratification, which is good for you, but then in the long term, it has to balance itself. That, should we say, negative you've done, you have to get some of that back for there to be like equilibrium.
In the Egyptian way of Mahat, when you have the heart and you have the feather.
It has to balance itself. So really, the Baba or the priest doesn't try and pass their judgment. They only work on what you've come to them for. So if you've come for something negative, in a sense, all they're doing is facilitating your request. You are ultimately responsible for actioning that request. And as a result, you might end up either paying for it or benefiting even more so.
Okay.
Yeah, so
let's move on. Let's move on to the next place. Now, Mr. Richie behind the camera. He needs to keep on talking a bit more, I want him to come in the front screen. Don't worry, he'll be there. He's part of the team, and we're even increasing in team because we've got some new guys coming on board. So watch out for that space. Anyway, so as we move on to the next artifact.
All right, Black Ice TV inside the British Museum, looking at an African section, which is funnily called Relating to Ancestors. Still in the house with my man Terry Riggs and Ancestral Voices maker Deleon. Take it away, boys.
Got his name mixed up again, but doesn't matter anyway. But if for people to understand, and if they saw you and they said, "Hey," and you want to know your real name.
My real name is Deleon Adolfo Deleon.
So
it's quite unusual. So
I'll say Mr. Adolfo. Yeah, that's the one. That's the one. Or Gasa. Good evening, sir. Yes, but we're now outside in the British Museum, and now we're looking at a few things that are about the Ancestral Voices and the information about the stool. And don't forget to get your DVD. Once again, here we go. Mr. Deleon, help us to describe what we can see in this window here.
Well, what we're looking at in this window are mainly stools. So this more relates to Akan societies, because within Akan societies, stools are very important symbols, not only of power, but also relates to spiritual elements within the culture. So for instance, let's say when a king dies, there's a process where they call it blackening the stool. So they blacken the stool where they wash it with particular, again, natural elements, things that come from within nature, certain herbs, certain tree barks, and whatnot, as a way of, in a sense, maintaining the spirit of that human being into that stool. Yes, so the stool is not just an object for sitting on. It almost becomes like a symbol of the presence of that person, because their spirit is then invoked into that stool. One of the most famous stools that we have in the Akan history is the one called the golden stool, which they say was brought down by a very famous traditional priest called Okomfo Anoche. And with this stool, he says in it is contained the spirit of unity and power for the Asante nation. And if at any time the Asantes were to lose that stool, they will lose their power. And we know...
Is that why the British tried to take it?
Oh yeah, and we know they've tried and failed. You know, it's protected to the degree that people are willing to lose their lives for it. You know, it's that's how important they consider it. And again, as we know with the history of the Asantes, they've been one of the most dominant tribes within that area for through our history. I think it's even why perhaps they even mention maybe in history so much, because you know the British found them almost undefeatable. You know, they fought a 100-year war with them. Remember, these were people who didn't have the same technologically advanced weapons as the British, but they still managed to
accomplish their mission.
Yes, indeed.
And they never even got the stool.
No,
up till today.
So that is the role that the stool plays, you know, in maintaining.
Yes, Uncle Richie, you can come in closer and just show them the information. People that need to come here and see these artifacts in the British Library, don't stay at home. Come out and come and see. You know what? If you stay at home, you will not get to learn. Unless you want to watch YouTube and watch us. We're trying to get you out of your house, especially on a hot day like this. So again, this is Terry Riggs on the play to be. You know, this is what we was talking about, drums and rhythms and vibrations. Now we've got these African drums and these talking drums. As my brother, my uncle, my relative, you name it, he's that to me. So anyway, we're going to continue talking about these drums. Fire away.
Well, drums, you know, drums, again, like everything within African societies, all have some element of a spiritual role to play. Now, drums, we can talk about their societal benefits and their spiritual benefits, as it were, because as you've correctly mentioned, the key thing with drums is the vibrations that they give out. You know, and the fact that with these vibrations, you can even affect your heart rate. You know, Professor Smalls, one of the things he carried over in our interviews with him was that, particularly among the Akan, some of these guys have to study for a period of 40 years before they're allowed to play in public. This is how much emphasis is placed on the importance of the drum. So we all know that drums, for instance, were used mainly as tools of communication. So during times of warfare, for instance, yes?
So it's like their mobile phones?
Yes, exactly, yeah? And you can carry across however many distances. But again, you also have certain rhythms that are played for veneration, for speaking and communicating beyond this realm. You know, in the Vodun system, one of the key things to do with sound especially, or the understanding, is that sound can crack open the space between this physical realm and that of the spiritual realm. So sound is very key to being able to access deities or even the world of the ancestors. Yes, because sound, as we know, we see this even in the physical realm. You know, there are particular, should we say, opera singers or whatnot, who when they raise their pitch or their, I've forgotten the specific terminology for it, but they can raise their tone or even voice to a certain level and it'll crack glass. How is they able to do that? There's a very important aspect to sound that we kind of conveniently don't deal with as much perhaps, but within the African systems, drums are key. They're key for communicating with ancestors, they're key to beginning ritual and inviting spirit to come in, and they're also key for being the opener, the key to open the doorway to allow spirit to participate, which is why in most African rituals you find that it starts with either drumming, singing, or even shaking. You know, they have the shakers. They have some element of sound, and it's the sound that opens the doorway to allow the spiritual entities to play a role in the ritual.
Describe us like these drums that we see at this precise moment.
Well, these drums, I believe they're the talking drums. Yeah, these drums are mainly for either funeral processions or even to if the king has a message to pass on to his people. But let's find out which ones they actually are. These ones are strictly for the funeral, yes? Okay. Yeah. So you see the atumpam, there you go. The played in pairs throughout the funeral ceremony. There's a female and a male drum, and it has a lower, deeper tone. So these tell the history of the person's life.
Okay.
Yeah, but again, one of the key things that I think I have to bring back to you so you become aware of is the fact that there's a male and a female. You see, this concept of balance within African spiritual and societal organization, because you find both, that the way the African conceives the spiritual world is the same way they've arranged their social world.
Okay.
Yeah, so the king at the top will become a representation of the creator, and then the deities become like the officials in the court. Yeah, and then this idea of balance is always expressed in the feminine and the masculine. Yeah, so even here, as you can see, there's not just a single drum, there are two. Why do we need both? Because again, we're looking for balance, and it's this balance that's key in making things happen, so to speak. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now we're going into this next part here, which is about the king's awakening. And you know, like for instance, I know we've got these things up here, but this is what represents the king's some of his jewels, isn't it?
Yes. These are items of the king.
So in forms of in the Akans, is this the Akans?
Yeah, this is I believe is the.
What kind of rituals do they kind of do or celebration when a king has gone?
The rituals are not a matter of public knowledge. So I don't think you will know all the rituals that are involved in.
And that's understandable.
Yes, but one of the key things which is of a bygone era, which obviously was not, I guess, the most positive thing in that, they would have servants. Sometimes they would even bury like the wife with the king, or she would willingly, and this is not something that would be by force. I guess by the societal construct, she would be expected to follow her man into the afterworld, and then in some cases they would chop off people's heads to go and serve the king. I guess it's not necessarily the most you're wondering why, but they elaborate ceremonies that happen. I'm not fully conversant with all of them, so I wouldn't like to get into the area of conjecture, so to speak.
And then secondly, it's like you know, one thing that I know about the Akans, they love to wear gold.
Yes.
And I wanted to see what is the significance of wearing the gold.
Well, I think the gold mainly, this is why the British first called it the Gold Coast.
Yeah.
Because of just the abundance of gold in the area.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Because I know they made it of value, but I feel that there's a form of connection with the gold.
Well, the gold was really only for the king as well, really. You couldn't just, should we say, common person, couldn't just grab it and just do whatever you want with it. All items of gold found were returned to the king. Because I guess they have a high value for it, so it could only go to the king. But I'm yet to come across particular spiritual significance for gold. So far, I haven't in all the sources
I always thought that it was some form of protection for the king.
Could be,
but
could well be.
But as I said,
well be. But I haven't seen it explicitly expressed in that form.
And in this part here, you know I've always seen them with, like with the stand and the cutlasses.
Yes.
Because I went to Germany, and I saw one of the long staffs, the golden staffs. What does that kind of represent? That represent anything?
Well, those some of those stuffs you find that at the top you have a totem. So it could be an eagle, it could be an elephant. They represent the different clans. So that staff is usually held by, let's say, the linguist, who's the person who speaks on behalf of the king. Because you cannot address the king directly. It's a form of disrespect. Yes. I guess how are you, the common person, speaking to the king? But again, you see this reflected in the African spiritual cosmology as well, which is why you have deities. Yes, most people seem to think that Africans, they never speak to their god or their creator. No. To speak to their creator, you go through the deities, because the deity he plays the same role as the linguist to the king. So if you want to say something to the creator as a form of respect, you first pass it to the official, who then relays that message and then comes back. So you see, you can see how the African social organization is very much based on their spiritual ideas as well. Yeah.
Okay. Now we've got one more little place to go before.
Find out what
But before we leave this place, I wanted to find out what the camera, the eagle, and quite a few other stuff that they have above us. If you could help us explain and define it for us.
Well, I know the eagle and camera and whatnot, these are made by a Ghana artist. They're all coffins for people to pass. And I guess it's his creativity and ingenuity. I think it was either BBC or Channel 4 that did a documentary, and he featured him in it. And since then, the British Museum has gone and acquired some of his artifacts because it's obviously made him famous.
Okay.
Yes, which is how they come to be up there.
Understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
So those are strictly coffins for burial because transition is also a very important time within African spiritual systems as well.
Okay.
You know, in terms of the person transitioning on and whether they're becoming an ancestor or there's the possibility that they might need to be reincarnated to come and try and fulfill their life purpose again.
Okay, we've got one more aspect and we're going to go downstairs. Yes, Mr. Rich, Terry Riggs, and my uncle,
Deleon, Adolfo.
Mr. Adolfo, as usual. Yeah, remember, BlackIceTv7, all one word, on YouTube. Get all the information and watch it now. Speak to you in a bit. Yes, once again, now we're in the African department, and there's one thing that you've got to understand about the information that we're trying to give out here. And we're going to go a bit on the masquerades. Now, how do we connect this spirituality to the masquerades?
Well, masquerades, again, form a particular, or they have a particular function, especially if they're playing a spiritual role. Masks in themselves can be used for a variety of purposes, or even are used for a variety of purposes. You can have masks that are brought out only when a king is being crowned, for instance, at the king's coronation. You can have some that are only brought out when it's the end of females' puberty rites or male circumcision. Then you have masks too, which are held to hold the spirits of either natural forces or even ancestors. With that, you have a whole range of them, you know. But among the Igbo, for instance, their masquerades, the Igbo of Nigeria, that is, their masquerades are specifically to represent the spirit of the ancestors. And actually, you know, not only, but also, it can also represent certain spirits that come to chase out evil from the community. So that whole procession is something symbolic of the driving out of negativity from societies. So this is why you have these masquerades going on. They're not, I guess, just colorful carnivals, you know? No, not at all.
Even in the Yoruba thing, they used to say when we was younger, when the masquerades come out, stay indoors, don't come out. That's right. Because of the spirits will come and chase you.
That's right. Yeah, exactly that. You know, and this is the role that they perform. In a way, it gives people a reminder every year, so to speak, or whenever the event comes up, of the need to once again try and keep yourself as clean as possible. You know, try not to take on, I guess, a lot of negative attributes, because in doing so, you kind of almost suppress your life force or your spiritual power, and you take on a lot of things that are not beneficial to you. So it has apart from that social role, it also plays a very deep psychological role, you know, for people who witness it. And as you said, exactly, you stay indoors because you don't want the bad spirits to come and catch you, you know. And in some other places, when they see that, they know that, okay, so for this year, we've cleaned ourselves, now we look forward to a better year, you know. So yeah, it has all these roles that it can play, particularly from that spiritual perspective. Yeah.
Okay, it was nice talking to you.
Thank you.
And I hope we can do more talking, and then getting more information, and hope we can be successful in everything that we try to do, as we try to work as one unit.
Definitely.
But if you had 3 words, what would you say to the public?
I would say get in tune with the African spiritual systems. There's not as yet a system I've come across, forget neuro-linguistic programming or any psychoanalytical therapy. This takes your mind to a certain level of understanding and awareness that I'm yet to see a system that can go that deep and put your mind in a place where you can manifest things that you need physically, as well as your own character and self-development. That wasn't 3 words, but you know.
What, let's say 3 things.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, if people want to get to hold of you or get to find out more information,
Yes.
how would they go about that?
I'll say the best place to go is the website, which is the 3 W's, ancestralvoices.co.uk. On there, you have all our contact details. You can call us, you can email us, and yes, we can take it from there.
Now, thank you, Mr. Rich, for filming this thing. Thank you to myself as Mr. Riggs, UK tour guide to the rest of the world. And we will be back with more information and more info. Information and wisdom is the key. Over and out.